Welcome, everyone. This is Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about transition into leadership and how you can find fulfillment in life. Sometimes in life, we're going to be afraid to take action. Sometimes we're going to be on the onset of burnout. Sometimes we don't know what next step we can be taking. And it can be difficult because you're trying to keep your head above water. The world's on your back. Everything is coming at you all at once, it seems, and you're trying to figure out how can you survive. And if you know anything about the brain's main role and job is to keep you comfortable, to keep you alive, and to keep you, hopefully, in a sense of, I'm doing well. But the last aspect of I'm doing well is not so much of what is conducive to true success and happiness. Happiness is going to be what? Financial freedom. Happiness is going to be what? Having a loving family. Maybe some materialistic goods. Happiness is a skewed definition that many people think is at a destination. However, we can choose to find power. We can choose to find happiness. We can choose to find a better life today. But in order to do that, we do have to go on a journey. We do have to have a conversation, not just with a coach, but with ourselves. Because when we are trying to navigate to the better parts of our life, there's going to be us as the roadblock. We are the gatekeeper to our success. We are the person who's stopping us from everything good. And it might seem like the world's against you, or that it's not fair, or that we should blame the rich because it's just unfair and it's uneven. But we don't have the habits and we don't have the discipline yet for that success. I always say if you do not have something in your life, it's because you have not attained what you needed in order to maintain it. So if you are having a hard time getting to the point in life, or if you have reached a point in life that you thought was going to be happiness or fulfillment and it's not there, then we have to go on a journey. Where is that? What do we have to find? What is our purpose? Well, today we're going to be looking at all of that. We're going to be having a guest come on. She is a transition and leadership coach, Emily Rogers. We're going to be having that conversation today, helping you understand what type of strengths you need, how to find them, and how can you get them sooner than later. So let's get into that interview with Emily and myself. There is only one of you, only one of me. Welcome, Emily Rogers, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Michael, for having me. I'm great, thank you.
Today, we're going to be talking about your work. You are a transition and leadership coach. And I love speaking with leadership coaches because they always have a unique mindset when it comes to helping people. The work that you do helps people learn about themselves in a way that they might not have realized quite yet. And even the busy executive who might be super successful, they need a coach in their life, executive coach, leadership coach, to help them understand, because when you have a business, you can be going after the products, the money, just trying to be better. But then you forget the things that matter, maybe family, fulfillment. So we're going to be talking about the work that you do, but in your own words, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help them?
I'm Emily Rogers of the Lead to Lead, and I am a transition and leadership coach, as you said. I'm really passionate about empowering people, individuals and organizations, to really start to show up the way they've always imagined that they could. And I think I'm probably a little bit older than you, Michael. There's a certain stage in life where people get stuck, and it can be mid career. If you're a female, maybe you've taken time out for your family and it's about returning to the workforce, or maybe you've reached the pinnacle of your career. You are the top of the ladder in the organization. And then you sort of wonder, well, what else is there for me? And it happens to all of us for different reasons, but we all get to that point and we go, okay, now what? And so I support people to understand what are the things that excite me? Where do my strengths lie? How do I want to use my strengths? And actually navigate that next step, that second act in our lives.
And that's a great point, that second act, because we get into a flow of things and we become so acclimated to our days. One of the big things that I work with is like parents transitioning from not being parents anymore. It's like they're 18, they are dealing with their kids going off to college, And now they're like, what do I do? I have all of this free time. They're out of the house is empty, and they're trying to find their purpose again. When we look at life for the different stages, the different acts, there's going to be moments that are good, moments that are bad. For example, leaving off to college, that's a good moment, right? You get to see them grow up. You can look back at all the pictures and you could say, wow, this is what the past 18 years were.
Yes.
But then sometimes there could be a moment in life where you have a grief, someone passes away. It can make you realize and look at life a little bit different. Can we talk about the different acts of life and how you help people through those?
And as you said, there are lots of different reasons that you go through a transition in life. When you get married, when you have kids, when your kids leave home, when you have a death, when any moment where you shift life, it could be that you move state, where you move country. There's lots of reasons why you transition. Maybe you got made redundant. Maybe your industry you're working in has changed and you don't enjoy the values anymore. There's lots of reasons you can get to that transition point. And as you said, it's about understanding, well, what is my purpose going forward? And understanding that purpose shifts with any shift in life. And so if you have had something change, either in your personal life or in your career, then there's a chance that there's been a shift in your purpose as well. And it's about realigning yourself with that shift. For some people, that will be a big change. For others, it's a smaller change, but understanding that it happens. And I guess reassuring people also that it's normal, that you will go through this. And you probably find it when you're the people you're talking with as well. It comes with a sense of loss, a sense of maybe a bit of erosion of self-confidence, maybe something is missing from me now. If you can understand that's happening for you, look in your life, what has changed that's caused that shift, and then how do you realign yourself to your new direction? We ask kids when they're at school, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's such an unfair question because with every life change, there's going to be a shift in that purpose. And so understanding that's going to happen and that it's normal is really important.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point too, because when they're in kindergarten, what do you want to be? Want to be a doctor? I want to be a lawyer. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer. And then eventually it was like, oh, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. It's too much work. And I mean, I just despise paperwork. I have to do some paperwork here and stuff, but like, I just despise paperwork. I was a teacher for quite some time. And when I had to do the grading of tests and paperwork and grades, I was just like, oh, this is terrible. Even the lesson plans is like, Jesus, but at the end of the first year, it got a lot easier because you created the systems, and so everything was a lot easier. And in our life, we create systems all the time. We create routines, and then eventually our routines are upheaved or upturned, and we have to deal with the I want to talk about something that has happened in the past, but it seems like it's always looming. The fear of another recession or pandemic, right? That is life change. Many people, they went through so much during that time. The transitions they had to go through in their mind, and many people learned during that time that they were not equipped to handle a big transition like that. Even the government found out like, whoa, people are just not equipped to do that. And I mean, if you look at our education system, it is not built on helping them transition. It's not helping them on grief. It's not even helping them be successful. It's the basic curriculum, the knowledge, the reading, the writing, the math. And that is what we teach them. But they don't learn these life saving and maybe the most important skills they will ever learn in their life. And that is the skill of transitioning from
Resilient.
yeah, to be resilient in the face of uncertainty and danger. How do you navigate through that?
Yeah, I think you're so right. The way societies, and it doesn't matter which culture you're in. I mean, we lived in Asia for 12 years, and it's no different really in other cultures either. But we are teaching kids on a verbatim system, and we go into careers. And I think traditionally, careers, you had a ladder in place of you. If you got into a hotel, you knew how to get to the top. If you got into an architecture firm, you knew the steps you had to take. Like it didn't matter what you did, you could see the steps. I think through that, we've lost that sense of resilience. And how do we bring that back? The one thing I start with all of my clients, and I'm sure you do this something similar, is to find your strengths. Let's just go back to all the skills and experiences you've had, and let's look at what your strengths are. And those two or three key strengths, once you know what they are, then you can ask yourself, How do I want these to show up in my life? How do I want to serve others with these strengths? And if anyone's listening to this or watching this and going, okay, yeah, how do I do that? There's a really fun way, which is to turn some really nice music on, whether it's classical or something a bit more upbeat, whatever is good for you. Set the scene for yourself, set a timer for 10 minutes, and put down on post-it notes absolutely everything you've ever done. Negotiating with your child why they can't have that cell phone, the inner strength you showed when you farewelled your child off to college, whatever it is. Put down everything you've done, everything you've done in a technical sense and work, all those personality things that you use when you're managing your personal life, put them all down on post-it notes. And then after 10 minutes, reset the timer for another 10 minutes and start to group them into categories. And you'll start to see 2 or 3 key things come out that you go, actually, they're my strengths. And then ask yourself those 2 questions. How do I want these to show up in my life? And how do I want to use them to serve others? And you're right. Economically, I think New Zealand's probably 6 months behind where the States is, but we are going to face some really tough challenges going forward in the next 1, maybe 2 years, maybe longer. How do we equip ourselves for that? If we can get hold of those strengths and hold tight to them and work out how we want to use them, then that builds that inner resilience within ourselves. And we can then navigate a path for ourselves that makes sense. You might have to pivot slightly depending on what's happening in the industry that you're interested in, but you'll be able to find a way forward.
I would love to have an example because I know many of the people who are listening, they're going to get some sticky notes now, some post-its, and they're going to start writing everything they did down and they're going to get stuck at this point. Well, how do I organize them? What does that organization look like when people are doing that process?
This is where setting the scene for yourself is really important. You've got to do it in a space where you're not distracted. Put your phone in another room. Like, you've got to set the scene for yourself and you've got to be in that zone, so to speak. For me, I light a candle. It's the music. It's being in I actually go outside in the garden and put it on the outside window of my house. Find a space that's good for you. And then when you do that first 10-minute brain dump, and another thing I didn't mention is to not judge yourself, because when we are going through these transitions, we tend to judge ourselves quite harshly. So don't judge yourself. Oh, someone else can do that better. Actually, is that really even a skill or a strength? Don't ask those questions. Just put everything down. Go with your gut instinct. When it comes to theming them and organizing them, be a little bit more critical. Be a little bit more. If I've talked about how I talk to my child, and I've got here about how I can negotiate in the workplace, are they the same skill? Bring them together. Start to literally bring them together. And you'll see when you do that, the sheer number of post-its that come into each group will show you visually where those strengths are. Because the hardest part is not judging yourself when you're doing this. And if you can keep that judgment at bay, if you can just be in the moment, then you'll start to see, well, actually, communication, for example, is a strength of mine. And I can use that to move myself forward. A lot of people through the pandemic may have changed careers, but ended up in something maybe that isn't fulfilling. A lot of women I've talked to ended up in admin roles that probably aren't their lifelong journey. Rather than being an accidental careerist, how do you take those strengths and say, well, what does it look like for me? And where can I go? And starting to identify what that could be moving forward.
There is a popular trend, and this is like a red pill conversation. We're not going to go too deep into it. We're just going to stay on the surface level on this one because I think the surface level is plenty to talk about.
Okay.
Where we talk about the transitions, we talk about different moments in your life. As you said, there could be a businesswoman who is in administration and maybe she has a family. There is a notion where it could be separated. There's some people who could be stay-at-home moms, and some people can go off and have a career and be career orientated and maybe put their career in their 20s and then in their 30s start a family. What's your take on that? Because I know there's a lot of confusion when it comes to that conversation. Should a person focus on their career or maybe focus on their family, or is it something that is personally aligned with what they're trying to accomplish in their whole entire life?
Yeah. And I think the key there is to go back to, what are your values? So my values are family, freedom, growth, and impact. And so my choices are going to come back to those personal values. If you're thinking about that from your own perspective, whether you're a career woman, stay-at-home mum, or dad, it's not just women, depending on what your circumstances are, if you're asking yourself that question, what are your values? I didn't have a choice, actually. We were living in Asia, and my ability to work in human resources was removed because of the countries we lived in. I was at home with my kids, but I was volunteering basically full time in NGOs, in networking organizations. I was doing some coaching, doing other things unpaid, which still took me out of the home, but gave me something that I could invest my time and energy in. What are your values? How do they align for you? The more people I talk to at the moment, it's that midlife piece where the kids are older, and probably you're seeing it as well. Before they go off to university or college, that is a more important time to be present for your children when they're in those difficult moments, potentially more so than when they're young. When they're young, they just want to be held and loved, and anyone can do that. Those relationships potentially more critical, and lots of people are opting out of careers at the moment to be more present with their teenage children, or making choices around flexible working so they can be more present with their teenage children. It's interesting, the different trends, but I think it comes back to what are your values, your personal values, and then make your decisions based on that.
If someone has a value of family, right? It's a big thing they want. Should they sacrifice that value of family because they have to have a career first, maybe become financially stable? Is it okay to put your values and your ideals and your dreams on hold until you're, I guess, in a more stable situation?
It's a good question, Michael. I did. It took me time to get into that space. So I was a little bit older when I had the kids, not as old as some people. But, it's a personal choice, I think. It also comes down to what support you have around you. I haven't lived in Australia since I was late teens, early 20s. I've been overseas ever since. So I haven't lived around support. I had to be in a situation where I could support, well, my husband and I could support ourselves because we didn't have that. We couldn't rely on grandparents. We couldn't rely on anyone else to help us out. We've been on our own doing this. For some people, they can actually balance it really well. And I think the opportunities to balance it are probably increasing post pandemic because people understand hybrid work and flexible working now more so than ever before. There's potentially an opportunity now that you can balance both and do both at the same time. But you need to be really centered in your values and not overcommit as well, because you can easily burn yourself out at the same time.
Burnout is definitely something that people need to learn how to avoid, but we give ourselves so much on our plate all the time, especially if you're a parent, especially if you're going to climb the corporate ladder. There's just always a new worry in our mind. And when we're looking at that aspect of worry, right, it's something that can be a good thing, but oftentimes it turns into a negative thing. So it turns into overeating or not conscious eating because you're just trying to fill yourself up with a moment of good, right? Get those good endorphins. And it seems like, especially here in America, I'm not sure how it is over there in New Zealand right now, but we do a very poor job at being the best person we can be, especially when it comes to our health, because we don't know how to operate through the anxiety and through the stress. How do you help people navigate through that anxiety and stress and become a better person at the end?
And it doesn't matter whether you are the CEO of a business or whether you are a stay at home mum. The model I use to manage your stress and overwhelm is the same. And that goes back to Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the circle of control and the circle of concern. You've got two circles. Everything that happens in your life falls within two circles. The larger one is your circle of concern, and the smaller one in the middle is your circle of control or your circle of influence. And so, what I encourage my clients to do is to take a step back and think about all the things that they're investing time and energy in, worrying about. Where do they sit? If it's the traffic, the weather, other people's opinions, what's happening in financial markets, whatever it is, that's all in that larger circle, the circle of concern. The things you have control over are what you eat, what you think, what you do next, the actions you take, your behaviors, your habits. I work with people to understand what is in the circle of concern. And if that's a concern, but it's really important to me, what can I do in my circle of control or circle of influence to have an impact on that? I'll give you a personal example. My dad diagnosed stage 4 cancer as we went into the first lockdown, and I couldn't get there. Yes, I was worried about him. Yes, it was very emotionally draining, but I actually couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't physically be there to help he or mum. I couldn't be a part of his medical appointments. There's nothing I could do. I had to sort of let go. Yes, I was upset. Yes, I cried a lot, but I had to let that go as well and focus on what I could do. I could send him care packages. I could be on FaceTime every day if he wanted to talk. And sometimes he didn't, and sometimes he did. I made myself available so that those opportunities were there. When I brought it back into my circle of concern, I could then be very comfortable. I was doing everything I could in my power to, help him, help myself, help my children, help my husband through this situation. And I think when he finally died, I was in a better place because I had operated from that circle of control, not from the circle of concern. Poor me, I can't get to my dad. This pandemic has locked my borders. It would never have changed his cancer diagnosis, but it would have changed how we as a family dealt with it. But there's other silver linings that came. My mum had to step up and take control of her own life. There's other things that come out of it. And if we spend all our time worrying or being in that circle of concern, we miss opportunities for resilience, for our own growth and development inside our circle of control. And then when things do get to that situation, my dad dying, you are stronger because you've been operating from that circle of control, because you've been in yourself working with your strength and your capabilities. You are more resilient and stronger and better able to cope. It's a rather personal example, but it sort of demonstrates, I think, quite well. If you're dealing with stressful things, if you're finding yourself worrying a lot, what is it that's causing that and where does it sit? Is it in the circle of concern or is it in the circle of control? And the more time you spend in the circle of control, that circle increases in size. You become more proactive and less reactive. You become more empowered in your life and less a victim of life. You can see how those two circles start to work.
I love that book, number one. Number two, if you haven't read that book, I encourage you to read that book. It is a life changer. Definitely a game changer for you if you are any level or point in your life where you're trying to make some level of change. When we look at what we can control and what we can worry about,
Yeah.
even if we understand what we can control, people will say, well, I know I can be in control of my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions, but I might not be confident. I might not want to do it. Are sometimes our own worst enemy. We will get in the way before someone else gets in the way. Our brain is almost manipulative in the sense of, well, if I don't pay attention to it, maybe it'll go away. It's like if you are afraid of the dark, you close your eyes.
With eye mask on.
Exactly. It's not going to fix the root of the problem. And what that causes later on is regret because we didn't take action. We didn't choose to take action. We didn't choose to sit in our power and to see what we could control. So later on, we're like, we just wasted all of this time not taking action, not being the people we can be. How can people start to get out of running away from who they are or who they can be and start to step into who they are?
And I think you've just touched on it yourself, Michael. It is all about the brain. It is all about the amygdala, the frontal lobe of your brain, the chemical reaction that is the traditional flight or fight response. And the amygdala, when it's activated, in caveman world, the lion comes, do I kill it or do I run away? That's the fight or flight response. In today's society, it's our self-talk. The amygdala, Amy talks to us all the time. It's a chemical reaction. You cannot turn it off. And that's when I was saying about don't judge yourself. Amy will say, oh, is that really a strength? Oh, other people are better than that than you. You haven't spent enough time in that. You should go and get the certificate. This is how Amy talks to you all the time. She's in your brain. She's a chemical reaction. You cannot turn her off. So how do you deal when something is always telling you, you probably shouldn't do that. No, the weather's not going to be right for that. Somebody else will be expecting this or that other people are better. If you're always hearing that internally, what do? You've got to tune into it. For me, I go out for a walk in the fresh air, in the sunshine. I hear what Amy's saying to me. I'm sorry if anyone listening is called Amy. I have a client calls her Priscilla. But I hear what she's saying, and then I say, actually, is that true? Is that really what's going on here? And I know 99.9% of the time it's not true. And that 0.01% of the time that it might be, there's things I can do about it. You just have to tune in and hear what Amy's saying. And then you can ask, is it true? And you probably guaranteed it's not going to be true. In which case, you can start to push Amy away. So when she says, you really shouldn't be doing that, you should be focusing on this over here. You can say, actually, Amy, it's okay. Right now, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I need to do. I'll deal with that part later. You can literally answer her back because all she wants to do, flight or flight response, is protect you. She wants to keep you where you are because that's what she knows. She doesn't want you making change. She doesn't want you shifting your life because that's scary. She doesn't know what that looks like for you. She doesn't know what risks are going to be out there. She wants to keep you safe. So you've just got to learn to hear it, ask the question, and then literally answer back and take that next step anyway, because what she's trying to protect you from could be the best thing that's ever going to happen to you. She doesn't know that. She only knows what's happened in the past and where you've been and trying to keep you there. She doesn't know what's forward. So you've just got to be able to push that chemical reaction back. You cannot turn it off. It won't go away. It's always going to be there, but push it back and take that next step anyway, because as I said, it could be the best thing that's ever going to happen for you, or it could lead to the path that leads to the next best. You just don't know what's going to go out there. You don't know what's in the future. We have to be able to deal with what Amy's saying. And a lot of our concerns, the circle of concern, is because of what Amy's telling us. It's because of those chemical reactions in the brain, because of what we see on media and how she digests that, because of what we hear our friends say and how she digests that. She's trying to make sense of the world for you and keep you safe, but it's keeping you in that back past old space. It's not moving you forward. So you've got to deal with it to be able to move forward.
Would you say when we're looking at our fight or flight, and we're going to focus on the fighting first, right? We have to go against what our brain is telling us.
Yeah.
Do you think that is going to be more bravery and courage, or more of confidence knowing that you can do it?
It comes back to knowing, doing that work and knowing your strengths. If you can do that work and know your strengths, your confidence will come, your courage will come. All of those things will start to come. She'll get loud. And this is the thing that I always tell my clients is really important to know. When you get closer to making change, when you get closer to making that shift, when you get closer to making that decision, she gets louder and louder. And you've got to have that resilience, that strength, and know your strengths and draw on those. Say, no, this is the right thing for me because I've done the work. I know these are my strengths. I know this is how I want to use them. I know this is how they want to show up. And then you can start to move yourself forward. For some clients, it's literally a mantra, a daily mantra that they put on their bathroom mirror and they say to themselves every morning to keep Amy a little bit quieter. For others, it's practical things like, having the confidence to step into that room and own that leadership role that they're in. They glance at their shoes, shoe people, they glance at their shoes. I have the right to be here. Lift their head up and walk in. And there's little things. Tap on the door as you walk into a meeting room. Tap on the door. I have the right to be here, and tap your way out. That was amazing. There's things that you can do in your daily life that bring that inner strength, bring that inner confidence to fight what Amy's saying to you.
That's an interesting point or aspect to it, because when people they get on that stage, when they step into that role of leadership, the doubt is going to come in. As you said, you're going to be fighting that inner voice, and sometimes it wins, but we do have to learn how to win more than we allow it to win, because we do have the power, we do have the utilities, but sometimes people need a little bit of guidance. I remember it was probably 2017, I think it was 2017, where I was transitioning from teaching and going into the world of being an entrepreneur. I didn't know anything about being an entrepreneur. I was a teacher.
None of us do.
Exactly. I was just a teacher. I was an educator. I loved my job. I got a paycheck. And then now I was in charge of my own life now. And it wasn't until I got a coach, a mentor, they were able to tell me what I already knew. And it is so funny because it's like I knew it. And every time I would get close, it was like I was almost afraid of this success. And so I ran away. And so now when I feel the most afraid, I know I'm on the right path.
Yes.
This is not so much of I'm in the lion's den and the lion is right in front of me fear. This is the fear of what we give ourselves as people when we're growing into success and leadership. There is a power that many people are afraid of because it is almost omnipotent in the sense of we have a lot of control over our lives and control over other people's lives. And it can be a scary thing because people don't want to mess up their life and they sure as heck don't want to mess up other people's lives.
No, exactly. And I think touching on that so well because, you know, people, we are driven by fear and got to be able to let that fear go. And so much of what we do in life is about just taking that next step, that next right thing. There's a video clip of Oprah, it's an old one, but she talks about it, you know, what is that next right thing? Just find that next piece of the puzzle, the next one. It doesn't have to be a big step, just the next one. Do that strengths assessment I talked about. I've got one you can go and download on my website, but just do something to find your strengths and then know those. And then once you ask those two questions, how do I want them to show up in my life and how do I want to serve others? You'll know the path you're going to start going down. So, what's the next little thing you can do? For so many of people I work with, and you probably find this too, Michael, it's actually getting your diary out and planning when you're going to make time for this and prioritizing you and that next step in your diary and allocating time to it and committing to taking action. That becomes a huge barrier when we're in that fight, flight, you know, fear sense is we get stuck because we don't move forward to take any action, and we can't if we don't put it in our diary. If we don't prioritize ourselves and that path for ourselves, nobody else is going to do it for you. No guardian angel is going to drop on in and make it happen for you. You've got to show up and make it happen for yourself. And you would have found the same thing starting your business. The fear's there. It's real. It's a chemical reaction. It's real. But if you don't take that next first step, find a mentor, find a coach, do some research, whatever it is, you've got to put it in your diary. You've got to make time for it and take action.
And I'm going to make it easy for everyone. The next step you should be doing is checking out Emily, her website. Go into that and finding your strengths. You can go there. You can go to Cliff and Strength Finder. There's so many tools that you can look at your strengths. And it's important that you have people in your corner by your side helping you along the way. We can go this path alone, but it's easier when you have someone there cheering you on, because in the moments when your mind is telling you to run, your coach is going to be saying, no, run toward that. It's so important for that. Emily, as we begin to wrap up, I would love to have some final words from you and then to please tell the audience where they can find you.
I said it at the start, we all transition at different aspects of our life. And I guess know that it's normal that you'll feel this uncomfortableness, that you'll feel a bit of loss, that your confidence will erode a bit. Just know it's normal. You haven't done anything wrong. You haven't made the wrong choices. You haven't made the wrong decisions. It's just your path. And when you feel like that, as you said, zero in on those strengths, find them. How do I want them to show up in my life? And how do I want to serve others? And that will then show you where you should be going next. And if you can do that, then you are ready to lead your next act, your second act. I just want people to feel empowered that it is normal and they can do it for themselves.
And where can people find you?
TheLeapToLead.com is my website, but I'm on social, The Leap to Lead, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And yeah, I'm just really passionate about people understanding this is normal and it's okay. And it's just finding that next path.
Awesome. All those links are going to be in the description box below. Everyone, check them out. Follow her on social media. Check out her website and begin to take control of your life. There's going to be a lot of worry in your head, and there's going to be a lot of things that you can control. And most of the things that you worry about, you can control. As we said, there's going to be the two circles of concern and what you can control. We want you to control what you can. Get some help today. Reach out to Emily and then find the leader within you that's hiding, maybe in the shadows, maybe in the dark. We just need a torch. We just need a light to light the way. I want to thank you so much, Emily, for coming on, spending some time with us and helping people transition into leadership.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for this opportunity. It's so great to meet you.
All right, everyone. I would like to thank you so much for watching that interview with Emily Rogers and myself. What went on in that episode was, number one, goodness. And number two, an eye-opening experience, because when we're trying to find who we are, who we can be, it's difficult in the beginning because we are looking at what we have done, what we can do, and we might be looking at some of the past mistakes we have made, or maybe some of the things we have learned. The past wisdom can also stop us. So we might have tried to jump across a river or a ravine or whatever, and we made a mistake and we failed. So what do we put into our mind? Oh, we can't do this. This is not something that we can do. If you are going to give yourself a limit like that, we do have to ask ourselves, is that limit going to be stopping us later in life? I remember when I used to live in Connecticut, there's a place called Brownstone Park, and it's a quarry that has like filled with water and is super deep. You can go cliff jumping, they have zip lining, swimming, water toys. It's a lot of fun. I remember I was on one of the cliff jumps and they have like a little baby one and then they have the taller one. And when you're on the bottom and you're like on the dock and you're looking up at the cliff, it doesn't look like it's that high. I'm like, that cliff is not even that high. There's other cliffs that are higher in the area that you're not supposed to jump off of because you can get hurt, but people go in after dark and they jump off those cliffs because they're just daredevils. So I get onto the highest safe cliff that you're supposed to be jumping there at the park. What I noticed was it's an interesting feeling when you are there and you are at the edge and you're looking down, your brain just starts firing off like boom, 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 boom. What are you doing? Are you crazy? This is dangerous. But yeah, I have seen people after person. Guess what? They're all fine. Why was I thinking I wasn't going to be fine? So I have a rule. There's going to be moments in your life where you're so afraid. You don't know what to do because your brain's shutting down. Fear will shut you down very quickly. So I give myself a 3-second rule. I give myself 3 seconds to take action. When I was a swim coach, I would sometimes have the kids go into the side of the pool. And this is no cliff jump, of course. It's just the side of the pool. The water's right there. But for them, that cliff was that side of the pool. They were afraid to jump in sometimes. And so I had to do my best. I had to coach them through that process to get them to jump in the water. And once they jumped into the water, typically one time, it was like, oh, I'm fine. That was fun. So we give ourselves this notion of fear, but then the moment we do it, we understand it's exhilarating. Success can be exhilarating. There's moments and there's aspects of our life that can be so fulfilling, yet we choose to avoid them. We choose to run away with other options, yet we choose to avoid them, yet we choose to be the lesser version of ourselves. Why do we do that? Well, we know why after listening to the interview, but sometimes you have to ask yourself, why am I afraid? 3, 2, 1. Either you're going to make it or you're not. In life, you're not going to make it out alive, so you might as well enjoy while you're alive. I'm not saying to go off and do all the dangerous things in the world, but to take a chance. We are going to have regret for the things that we don't do, not for the things that we do. You might say, oh, I wish I did this and I wish I did that. And there might be a point in your life where you're like, I regret doing that. Okay, maybe you regret going to a casino and putting all on black and it was red. That is a life lesson, but money can always be rekindled. For the people who think that money is just something that is just like, oh my goodness, like I have to hold on to it so tightly. And I always say, if you hold on to something very tightly, you're going to lose it. Everything that I do, it's an open door. Come in, you can leave, and it's fine because abundance doesn't know restrictions. But if we hold our fist very tightly, this is restriction. This is a restricted mind. This is a restricted action. How can we start to give ourselves a mindset of going after more in our life, understanding the pros and the cons to what we do, our past and our future, what type of lifestyle we want, values, things along those lines? We talked about raising kids. We talked about how our kids are going to be teenagers and you should spend more time with them then versus when they're younger. Anyone can take care of them when they're younger. It is very true that anyone can take care of your child when they're younger. But I have found in my teaching and my coaching that in order for them to stick around a little bit longer, you have to be present to some degree. For example, if you have someone else watching them from, let's say, 7, 8, 9, right? And you're just always working. At some point, you are going to want to hang out with them when they're a teenager and they're not going to want anything to do with you. I can use my own life as that example. My mom, she was a worker. She worked 2, 3 jobs just to make ends meet. She sent all of her kids to private school. And even though sometimes we didn't have tuition that month and we had to sit in the office or We didn't have money for electricity and things along those lines. I mean, there was always something going on. There was always a problem, but we can learn from the past. And the past was she was always working. I could see that. My family could see that. My siblings could see that. Regardless of that, when I was a teenager, I didn't want to hang out with my mom. Not that I didn't love her. It's just that now I'm living my own life. We go through a certain aspect of growing up, and this might not be everyone. I can just speak on my experience in teaching, seeing it firsthand, and then me in my life and what the correlation is. You can not be present, and that's fine. But if you're more present, they're going to be more open to spending more time with you when they're teens. They're going to come to you and ask questions. I didn't ask my parents any questions. If I had a problem when I was a teenager, I fixed it myself. Yet, if there was an opportunity for me to speak to my parents when I was younger more, my mom and my dad, and be open about things, it wasn't one-sided. I wasn't the kid. I was able to be a part of the conversation. I would have spoke to them more. I mean, today, I understand the value of family because I have my own family. And I understand that I can keep going in life and ignore family, but that is not what one of my values are. Family is so important. And I always knew I wanted a family. I always knew I wanted to continue to be a part of my family. It wasn't an age when I was 21 where I say, you know what, I'm done. I'm not going to talk to you guys anymore. Thanks for raising me. See you later. Or see you on Thanksgiving or Christmas or along those lines. And though I might not see them because I'm so far, I live in Texas, they live in Connecticut, I still think about them. I still have the notion of, growing up. And I look at, well, how can I make it so my family or my kids, when they're growing up, they can see, oh, let me talk to dad about this. Let me confide in someone else. I understand I'm a mindset coach and I can help him succeed wildly and be the best person he can be. But at some point, mom is mom and dad is dad. And so I understand from coaching and why parents would come to me because they can't do it. Or maybe they have already passed the time. They don't have the patience. They don't have the education. They don't have the know-how to navigate them. So there is a point where we do have to understand that we can spend time with them. We can have anyone spend time with them. But when you spend time with them, you have your whole life to live. And I always say, when it comes to your growing in your life, you can live two ways. You can have a career, you can have a family. Of course, those two have been mixed in the past, 50 years, where people have to go to work. And if you have a family, great. But we look at that aspect of you're going to be so much more appreciative that you had the family than if you didn't have the family. Maybe you're going to give yourself a false sense of security if you say, I'm so happy I didn't have any children because then I couldn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. But yet you never had the feeling of holding your own child. Yet you haven't had the feeling of understanding what it is like to walk them down the aisle in marriage. And I mean, I'm going on the extremes here, but I just want to talk about that because that is going to be an aspect of fulfillment. When you're transitioning, one of the first things I asked Emily was, we transition at certain points in our life, a big one being when our kids go to college. That is going to be a transition that many people are never ready for because it's like, whoa, I'm getting older. Typically, what I have seen happen is that once they lose that purpose, if they do not fill themselves with another purpose, they start to go downhill very quickly. It's almost like putting a adult into a nursing home. If there's no purpose for them, they drop so drastically. I worked in a nursing home for 6 years. I've seen it happen every day. It's an interesting way for the mind to be. We have to have some purpose. We have to have something to live for. And at each part of our life, there's going to be so many transitions, the good and the bad, as we talked about. You do have to learn how to be present. You do have to almost be a mind reader or a fortune teller or a psychic. And so you can look at your actions and then start to see the results of what you're doing. I find that it's very difficult to do it yourself. What Emily recommended, get sticky notes, journal, diary. Those are going to be helpful tools. But one of the best things that you can do is get a coach. It doesn't matter if it's Emily or myself. Find someone who's going to help you along the way to a better understanding of your life, your purpose, and then finding true fulfillment. Because fulfillment might be an idea today, but it's going to be a necessity tomorrow. So do not wait, learn more, check out the links in the description box below, and begin to transition your life into something better. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, you can email me coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I'll see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone take care.